1.7 Moscow Pullman, KNWV 90.
Good evening, everybody. Today is Monday, June 19th, and this is the Moscow City Council regular meeting. John?
Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Before we go to the consent agenda, I just want to make one announcement. There will be no executive session this evening, so everybody's aware of that. And now we'll go on to the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda, but to remove one item off, and that's item J.
Okay.
So just accept everything else except remove item J.
Okay, got a motion by...
Second.
Okay. Motion by Catherine and a second by Jim to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item J, which will be pulled. I'll start the roll with John.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, Catherine, you have the floor on item J.
This J is transfer of Hamilton funds to Parks Capital Fund for construction of Indian Hills Playground, and we had it at the administrative committee meeting. There was a presentation about this, and because this is the first time that we're going to use the funds, I thought it would be helpful just to go through the process so that everybody sees how it works in public. So that's why I pulled it.
Jen, would you like to?
Yeah.
I can, let me go to the podium there.
Yeah.
I can
Okay.
give a brief overview.
This is Assistant City Supervisor Jen Piffner filling in for Gary Riedner, who is away at a meeting today.
Thank you very much. And Catherine had asked to have this list up. In the May 15th meeting, 2017, the original resolution, 2017-07, was passed, and that was the resolution that the council authorized providing for Hamilton funds for park needs. These are the list, or this is the list of parks that were presented at that meeting in the Indian Hills Park, which is what this evening's resolution pertains to, is first on the list, and it's looking at the dedication of a portion of Hamilton funds for the park, the playground equipment specifically, and looking at some of the other options on the list. We have Indian Hills, Morgan's Orchard Park, Atani Park, Milton Arthur Park, and Lola Clyde Park. And as different projects for those parks come forward, the plan is to present a resolution to council for each one of the expenditures that would be accounted for in the Hamilton funds in order to memorialize those transactions and lay out how that process follow that process and laying out how we move forward.
Okay.
Question?
No, I just wanted to, because we're starting that process, and it's a lot of money, and I just wanted to show the process.
And you may see, I mean, as Lake says, the projects come forward, we'll bring other resolutions for these other projects, just get them developed and those playgrounds vetted, and we'll move forward in that fashion.
I'll make one other note, being as we pulled this off as well, that Bill Parks is, as an individual, is donating $25,000 towards this park as well. So
we're very appreciative of that.
Yes, very, very appreciative of Mr. Parks.
So thank you. So I'll just move to accept the transfer of the Hamilton funds to Parks Capital Fund for construction of Indian Hills Playground.
Okay, so do you approve item number J on the consent agenda?
Yes, I move to approve it.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, motion by Catherine, second by Jim to approve item number J, dealing with the Indian Hills Park. Now I'll start with Walter.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We'll move on. Item number 2, staff recognition report. Jen, do we have anything tonight with that?
We don't have any staff recognition reports this evening.
Okay, thank you. Item number 3, mayor's appointments, and I have none this evening. So we will move on to item number 4, which is public comment and mayor's response period. And just for the ground rules, so everybody knows this, anything that is in front of Board of Adjustment and or Planning and Zoning or on this evening's agenda cannot talk about those issues, but you're sure welcome to come up and speak about anything else. And what we do is ask for your name and address, and we give you 3 minutes. So if there's somebody who'd like to speak, please come up. Okay, with that, we will move on to item number 5, which is the public hearing proposed rezone on 822 Elm Street. Michael Ray, sir, you have the podium.
Thank you, Your Honor, council members. So before you tonight, we have a public hearing for a rezone at the Campus Christian Center, which is at 822 Elm Street. So just to go over the proposal, we have an 18,000 square foot parcel, 822 Elm. The applicant's requesting to rezone it from the current multiple family residential R4 zone to the neighborhood business zoning district. You have the Campus Christian Center on the main floor, and then you have what was formerly Sisters Brew Coffee House on the bottom floor, which is currently part of the Campus Christian Center. So just to familiarize yourself with the property, it's in the center of your screen outlined in red. You can see the Campus Christian Center to the south of the property, and then you have a private parking lot there to the north, a series of sidewalks that transect the property. Elm Street's to the west, which heads north-south. You have University Avenue to the south, and then a private alley, or actually a public alley, excuse me, city-owned alley directly to the east that separates the Campus Christian Center property with an adjacent parking lot to the east. Surrounding properties include primarily fraternities and sororities, as well as university uses. So you have the admin lawn, kitty corner to the southwest of the property, and then various other institutional uses. So we have a church to the southeast over here. You've got some multiple family residential to the east. And then to the south, an item of note is the Perch, which is also in the neighborhood business zone with some apartments behind that. And that's a grocery store. So this is a Google Street View. This is looking at the intersection of Elm and University, looking northeast at the Campus Christian Center building. This would be the first floor, and you can see the basement below it. This is further on Elm Street. Looking to the southeast, you can see the series of sidewalks as well as the private parking lot there to the east of the property. So just to cover the comprehensive plan land use designation, currently designated as civic institutional, as well as the entirety of the surrounding area. As you can see, the campus core, as well as a lot of the private development with fraternities and sororities and multiple family residential properties within this area is all designated as civic institutional. So taking a look at that comp plan designation, within the 2009 comprehensive plan really gives no description of the intention of the civic institutional. You would think that it just is self-explanatory, but really any designation within the comp plan, we typically have some type of description with appropriate zoning to go along with that. The entirety of the campus, including private properties, are also designated as civic institutional. Really no direction on appropriate zoning designations within that CI. And then throughout the city, anytime you have an institutional or civic use, such as a school or church building, 1912 Center, those would all be designated as civic institutional. So it really encompasses a lot of zoning districts. So regardless of where these specific properties are located, and regardless of the surrounding land use designation, whether it be residential or commercial, they're always designated as civic institutional. So that's something we're going to probably look at clarifying as the Planning and Zoning Commission currently moves through the update to the 2009 comp plan is just look at clarifying the civic institutional designation within the comp plan update to provide a little bit more direction on that. Looking at the zoning configuration of the area, currently zoned R4, which is multiple family residential, as well as a lot of the surrounding fraternities and sororities within this area. The green represents the university zoning district, so you have the admin lawn to the southwest, as well as some other university buildings, as well as some parking lots here to the east, northeast. And then further to the south, across the university, the Perch property is currently designated as neighborhood business. And this would be the proposal to rezone the property to neighborhood business. It would be really grouped within the Perch property to the south. We usually zone to the middle of the street for zoning districts. So taking a look at neighborhood business zone, what the zoning code dictates is typically the lowest intensity commercial zoning district in the city, intended to apply to areas less than 2 acres in size, usually surrounded by residential neighborhoods, and it serves as more allowance of commercial services to these residential neighborhoods. And the commercial services permitted are those where traffic generation, access requirements, impacts of lighting, neighborhood need for services, and noise production will be compatible with residential uses. And then it gives us some appropriate circumstances where to apply the neighborhood business zone, where local commercial facilities will serve the everyday needs of a limited neighborhood area, where activity levels associated with small-scale office development can be accommodated or tolerated by surrounding land uses and existing public services, where a neighborhood core is identified, and it's easily accessible by pedestrian or vehicular circulation, and where such commercial development will result in minimal interference with the surrounding residential area. And just an example of the uses that are allowed within the neighborhood business zone. You have a wide variety of residential uses, retail sales, personal services, restaurants, professional offices. Do allow some daycare facilities, churches, and community and neighborhood centers. Taking a look at the utilities and the streets in the area, currently has existing water and sewer of adequate capacity to handle any future development of that property. And then Elm and University are both currently designated as local streets, and they're currently developed, paved with curb, gutter, tree lawn, sidewalks on both sides. Elm has on-street parking on both sides of the street, but University only has parking on one side, and that's the south side of the street. And the on-street parking is currently regulated by the Parking and Transportation Office at the University of Idaho. The applicant did conduct a neighborhood meeting, and all those neighborhood meeting materials are attached to your packet tonight. Planning and Zoning Commission conducted a public hearing, and they recommended approval unanimously to City Council, and that happened on May 24th of this year. Staff's recommendation is to approve the proposed zoning ordinance under suspension of the rules and adopt the Planning and Zoning Commission reasoned statement of relevant criteria and standards. And I'd certainly be able to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions for Mike? Jim?
Mike, this change in zoning here has no effect on the 300-foot requirement for alcohol sales between a religious institution and say the Perch. You know, in the past they're within 300 feet of the Christian Center and the LDS Institute. Changing the zoning doesn't affect that at all, does it?
It doesn't. It's all dependent upon the use. So,
okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Other questions for Mike before I open the public hearing? Thank you, Mike. I will open the public hearing. So I will take testimony for those that are in favor. I will take testimony, general testimony or opposed.
Mayor, someone
Well, come on up and speak, identify who you are, sir, your name and address, and we'll give you 3 minutes.
Good evening, council members. My name is Ben Camp. I'm at 116 North Polk, Moscow. I would speak in support of this proposal. I'd add that I'm also on the board of the Campus Christian Center and be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. You're making this too easy on us here. Anybody else want to testify on behalf of this? Okay, well, I will go ahead and close the public hearing then and turn it over to council. John.
Well, since we don't have any real comments from anybody, I would move that we make the proposed rezone, and we do it under suspension of the rules, requiring 3 separate readings, and that we also, now do we do the reason statement at the same time?
We have to adopt the Planning and Zoning Commission's reason statement in with your motion, John. You can put that
in the same motion?
Yep.
Okay,
absolutely.
And then I would also add to that motion that we use the prepared reason statement of relevant criteria that was prepared by Planning and Zoning.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion by John and a second by Jim to approve the proposed zoning ordinance and the suspension of the rules requiring 3 complete and separate readings. And
Just a
that,
clarification on that motion. Were you also asking that waive the first or the reading or the required to read it by title and publish by?
Oh, okay, I forgot that part. Excuse me. Would you put that?
okay, and I'll reread it because I was going to include that in. So now that Rod has corrected us, John's motion said to approve the zoning ordinance and the suspension of rules requiring 3 complete and separate readings and it be read by title and published by summary, and adopt the Planning and Zoning Commission's reasoned statement of relevant criteria. Did we get that? Jim seconded that. Do you have that? I'll start to roll with Walt.
Mr. Mayor, a point, if I may, before we vote.
Okay.
I would note that in our packet, there's a copy of the minutes of the neighborhood meeting that was held. There were no comments in opposition, quite a few comments in favor of this, such as making grab-and-go food available on that side of campus. The uses at the building wouldn't change the exterior of it. They already have private parking. So that meeting also was in favor of it.
Okay. Let's start to roll with you, Walter.
Aye.
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 Okay. So that proposed ordinance is approved, and I got to find it here somewhere to read. What number is it? 6. Okay. Ordinance number 2017-06, an ordinance of the City of Moscow, Idaho, a municipal corporation of the State of Idaho, providing for the zoning of an approximately 31,908 square feet of property described in Section 1 of this ordinance as neighborhood business, providing that the provisions of this ordinance be deemed severable, providing for this ordinance to be in full force and effect from and after its passage, approval, and publication according to law. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to item number 6, was commitment of Hamilton funds at the Palouse Ice Rink. Jen Piffner will be presenting.
Good evening again. So, in August of 2016, the Palouse Ice Rink Association came forward with a request for a donation of $1 million from the Hamilton Fund to support ice rink activities that benefit youth in our community. At that time, we worked through a few details. There were lease issues that we needed to deal with, as well as their SUP. Those have been ironed out over the last few months, and the resolution as presented has a few caveats that go with it that I'll highlight quickly. The SUP is in place until the 28th of June, 2019. It's by that time that the entire amount of funds must be committed so that the city's capstone funds, which have been pledged but won't be accessed until that time or until such time as all other funds are raised, would then be available. And then as much as possible, the facilities to be maintained for the youth of Moscow in keeping with the Hamilton Fund's bequest. Those few items there, the $1 million, and then this was reviewed at July 12th, 2017 Administrative Committee as well. So any questions? I'd be happy to help with that. And then I believe we have a few folks from the ice rink here tonight if there's any other questions.
Okay, well, Jim, this is heard in front of you guys at Public Works and Finance.
This was
Administrative.
Administrative, I think, came
That
through.
was with me and John
Okay,
and
did you
Walter.
have it as well?
No.
Okay, you want to go ahead
We-
and comment on it now?
We just had the principle of committing the funds through Parks and Rec. They did the, admin did the commitment of funds
Okay.
portion of this.
Catherine, would you like to comment on
Well,
it?
I think that Mr. Mangini did an excellent job presenting all the information that they were trying to do to make sure that they had wrapped their head around trying to raise the money. And he was going to speak tonight, and I think it's very helpful to do that. And because I really appreciate that you clarified when the rink makes money. I think that was helpful to understand. I hadn't heard that information before. So I thought that what you did at administration was really good, and I'd like to hear it again.
Well, you know, we've been dealing with this for well over a year. So, Tony, why don't you come up and identify yourself and talk to us a little bit, please?
Thank you, Mayor Lambert and City Council and staff. Do I need to say my name and address, or just my name?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Tony Mangini, 606 Conestoga. Catherine, you said several things, so if I missed something, please.
I took notes when we were in the committee meeting.
Okay. As far as since last I was here, we had a lot more people here last time, with a little less people this time around. But we've still been working hard at trying to make this thing a reality. We've since our fundraiser, Bob Stout, has resigned as our lead fundraiser. We're going to be working more as a small group, trying to target potential donors. To help us with that, we are working with a graphic design artist named Melissa Rockwood, and she's helping us with a brochure. I shared that with the group last time, at least one of the draft copies that we've developed. We're hoping to have that available here in a couple of weeks. We've also received testimonies from several people, Mayor Lambert included. A wonderful letter from the University of Idaho, Dan Ewert. He is the Vice President of Facilities for U of I. We are working hard at developing some corporate sponsoring opportunities to help with our fundraising efforts. And as I've gone through this process, I've been involved with the rink for several years, and it's always astonished me the things that I don't know. And one of the things I shared with the group last week is the website for the ice rink had 38,000 hits in the last 12 months from people wanting to see the schedule or learn about our programs or whatever. And it amazes me because this little facility that we have, as simple as it is, 38,000 people decided to visit our website, and of that 38,000, 42% were first-time visits, which really I was really surprised by that. What Catherine mentioned before, as far as how do we generate our revenue, the facility is worth the most when it has ice on the ground. We do use it for a few things in the off season. There's some roller derby teams that use the facility in the summertime. We've used the facility for a bar mitzvah, for a wedding ceremony. The football team a couple years ago when we had the bad fire season, they used the facility. Usually we either let people use it or it's at a very nominal fee. But most of our revenue when we operate is between October and March. That's when there's the peak demand. That's when the teams are playing. And that's when people are looking for recreational opportunities that appeal to what we have to offer. And so that works very well. Excuse me. A couple things I wanted to mention that's new since we met last week. The board for the ice rink met on Tuesday last week, and we had bid out receiving a design development plan for our ice rink, which we had met with some contractors, Scott Gropp in particular, who strongly advised us to go through that next step so that we could get better information as far as getting quotes with contractors and getting a better price. The number we've been using is a number from 2016, and it was an estimate from an architect. We really need to pinpoint that number because all indications our costs for construction have gone up pretty significantly, and we really need to know what our number is. And so we awarded our project to a group called Longwell Trap up in Coeur d'Alene. They're the same group that did the rink up in Coeur d'Alene a few years ago. So we're really excited. That's a big step for us. It's a big financial commitment for us, but it further demonstrates our commitment to making this a reality. We're not talking about if we build an ice rink, it's when we build an ice rink, and it's a mentality that we're changing internally, and we're going to be changing within the community. I am working, actually, I saw Jenny in here earlier. I'm working with the chamber on scheduling an after-hours event for the ice rink to get businesses down there so they can see what we're doing. Hopefully some will choose to maybe do a dashboard advertisement, find some way to help us financially, because there's some great opportunities for business, because there's a lot of people that come through that facility. We average about 30,000 visits a year from our regular users and just people coming to the area to check us out. And the last thing I was going to mention is that another thing we decided last week is we want to recognize the people that do support us as we go through our efforts. And most facilities do something like this, but we're going to design some sort of a plaque. We want to work with area artists and come up with a concept. I know the Hamilton Center has one as you enter in the building, acknowledging the people that help with that facility, and it's pretty common. We're pretty open. I really haven't decided. I think with so many creative people in this area artistically, and there's so many possible mediums that you could use, we're looking for something that's going to look nice, professional. It's going to start with the Hamilton Fund contribution, and we're going to work down from there. But we want to do something to let people know, again, that we're serious and that we're wanting this thing to happen. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions for Tony? Thank you, Tony. One of the things I was in, of course, I was at that meeting of Public Works and Finance as well as the admin, and one of the statements that you had made is that this gives you a 2-year time frame, so it kind of puts a heat right on about getting this thing moving forward and getting with it. So I think that's a good thing.
And I embrace that, to be honest with you. I think, again, I think there's been this mentality that this is a someday project, and we got to get away from that. And if you don't mind, not to digress, but I happen to umpire in this area, and Friday and Saturday I was at the city ball fields. I did a Cal Ripken game on Friday, and I was doing the Legion Blue Devils game on Saturday. And Moscow's hosting a Cal Ripken tournament this weekend, and invited several teams from outside the area. And it was great, just seeing the impact it had, for kids having the opportunity to use the facility, a lot of families getting together, enjoying great weather, and sharing an experience here in Moscow. And I could just see that transferring over to what we're trying to do with this facility. It just adds to the quality of life. It makes us why this is such an amazing community to live in is having these kinds of resources available to people. So I wanted to say thank you for the work that you did in the past to make those ball fields happen, and we're looking forward to doing the same with the ice rink.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Did you have something?
Did you want to tell the gala date?
Yeah, the gala date right now is September 22nd. I believe it's going to be scheduled. It's going to be at the 1912 Center. If anything changes with that, I will let you know. That we've got a couple of board members that are heading that up, but we're really excited to get that going.
Great. Thank you, Tony. Or you have a question for Tony?
No, a statement, if I might. This is the formal commitment by the city of $1 million. We've talked about this for quite a few months. The council is totally behind this. We wish you all the success in the world. But as the mayor just said, there's a 2-year drop-dead date on this money. And, not to tell you your business, but waking up every day thinking how many days I've got left to raise the money to get this $1 million might be something of a plan. Anything else we can do to help you, we'd really like to. I'm sure we're going to be giving him a letter of support of some sort indicating the money's committed. But you've still got a hill to climb. This is just a bump in the road that's been taken out, and we wish you the best.
Appreciate that.
John.
That being said, I'd make a motion that we approve the proposed resolution for a commitment of Hamilton funds to the Palouse Ice Rink in the amount of $1 million, and that would be my motion.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion by John and a second by Catherine to approve the resolution of $1 million committed by the City of Moscow's Hamilton Fund. So I'll start with Walter. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, there you go, Tony. Go to work.
All right.
You got 2 years. Your deadline date is the date that my youngest son turns 40. So that'll be an easy one for me to remember. Just thought I'd throw that out there to everybody. Okay, item number 7 is a CUP 2017-007 appeal, remand decision and instructions by Bill Belknap. We're also going to hear some from Rod Hall as well as our attorney. But Bill, you have to explain to us what we're doing here.
Thank you, Your Honor, and good evening, council members. So a little bit of background on June 5th of this year at the council's last meeting. The council conducted an appeal hearing upon 5 different appeals to a zoning board of adjustment approval of a proposed educational institution to be located at 112 North Main Street within the Central Business Zoning District. The City Council, after consideration of the City Council considered the arguments presented by all 5 appellants, and upon the appeal from Ryan Pilgrim, decided to remand the matter in part back to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Council moved to remand the matter back to the board based upon criteria 4 and 7 and provided staff with direction that additional public parking availability counts be conducted over the noon hour and that the board review the methods of parking mitigation calculation. Staff advised the council that the instructions of remand should be in writing so the board had clear instruction from the council, and that's what we're here this evening to review to make sure that what has been drafted adequately captures the intent of the council and provides that instruction to the Board of Adjustment in their reconsideration of the matter. From the direction received from the council, it appeared that it was the intent of the council to remand the matter to the board with additional parking use information in order for the board to consider that additional information in determining conformance with criteria number 4 and 7. Additionally, the council gave direction that they wish for the board to conduct an additional review of the method of parking mitigation calculation. As you may recall, there was a calculation that was completed to determine what the typical parking demand for the building would be underneath typical common commercial uses, and that there was that was compared to the educational institution, and the method of mitigation was the difference between those two was required for the use. During the council's deliberation, the council did not appear to give direction that the board conduct a new public hearing to take additional public testimony. So that's something we wanted to confirm that was the intent of the council this evening. It also appeared that the purpose was to further consideration of criteria number 4 and 7, as I mentioned, and to collect that additional information that was not available during the initial hearing and enter that information into the record, and further to review the parking mitigation calculation, as I mentioned. Staff did receive a couple inquiries regarding the draft remand instructions and the lack of the specific reference to criteria number 4 and 7 that were included in the motion that the council had made. To ensure that the remand instructions accurately reflect the council's intent, staff is recommending a minor amendment to that instruction, number 3, to include the direction for the review against those two specific criteria. So the amended item number 3 would read that the board review criteria number 4 and criteria 7 of the reason statement of relevant criteria and standards signed on May 3rd, 2017, considering the prior record and the additional information to be entered into the record in conjunction with these remand instructions, and make a decision upon the conditional use permit application. So that would provide direction to the board that they are to consider both the record that was prepared before as well as the additional parking count information the council wished the board to have, and then consider that information in the context of criteria number 4 and number 7 as the motion seemed to indicate from the council's decision on this matter. Staff would recommend approval of the order of remand and instructions with further consideration with the proposed amendment as was suggested by staff this evening. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Catherine?
You said that you could have a public hearing and then you could take more the Board of Adjustment could have a public hearing and take more testimony?
It was our understanding that the motion that was passed by the council was intended to enter that information into the record, but not to conduct another public hearing.
Oh, I didn't even
I
know.
want Rod to speak to that. Rod?
Yes, I mean, if the council's was remanding it back with instructions to gather additional information and to review and reconsider the comparison, what they used for the comparison, to make sure that they accurately reflected an appropriate mitigation for the parking issue. This council didn't seem that it was remanding it back for a brand new proceedings. You specifically were interested in a issue on parking, and that's what you seem to focus on. And so, I mean, you could, if you found that the board was completely off base and wrong and there was nothing to do that, you could have remanded it back for new proceedings, but that wasn't the findings from this body.
Okay.
I was ignorant. So
You were what?
I was ignorant to.
Don't be so hard on yourself. All of us are that way from time to time. So,
in trying to learn how to do that, but I did want criteria 7 to be considered and more fully because of that cumulative impact piece, and because. The problem I had was the fact that it's not a business, it's an educational institution. So how does that work?
I think Bill had that in there, the remand to go to check on criteria number 4 and number 7.
Yeah, that's what the amendment.
So it's already,
Okay,
it's already
so
in.
Correct.
It's-
So the amendments, the amended language would
Right.
give the board direction that they needed to review criteria number 4 and 7 in light of the new information that the council wished the board to have. So the additional parking counts during that noon hour to assess what appeared to be the primary focus of the council was the parking mitigation. If we misinterpreted the motion that the council made, this is the
that
appropriate
was me
time
bumbling. Thank you for
for
your
us to
help.
make sure that we, this is the council's decision, and the intent this evening is to have the council confirm that this was the direction they wish to provide to the board, and then the council can approve that decision, and they will be transmitted to the board.
I do have another question.
Okay.
It had to do with, we had been, you were trying to help me figure out the times, and I didn't understand, are we going to just look at the times now, or are you going to compare it to times of parking over the course of the school year, and can you do that? I mean, because the number of people in our community is
Diminished.
Yes.
As we discussed, and that was an active point of discussion on the meeting on June 5th, is
Yeah.
that is a reality. What's happened now is that students are no longer, or many of the students have left the community for the course of the summer. Staff's suggestion at that time is we would recount at 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. to match the original counts, and we'd also count at the 12:30 additional time period that the council wished to have collected for the board's review. And then we could compare whether parking utilization went up during the noon hour as compared to the 9 and 2, and then we can correlate that against the information that was collected before students were released for the summer. That is really the best thing we can do at this point in time.
Okay.
So we will collect that information along with the 12:30 count as the council requested. We will try to extrapolate from that the difference in how that demand changes over that time period so that the board would have at least that information. But that is really the best thing, I guess, that we felt we could do at this point in time.
I have another question.
Rod?
I was just going to say, and with the instructions back to the Board of Adjustment, when they make their decision, they have to address these issues. So they've already had their decision that they had. Now that there's new information, they can deliberate, and then they'll have to account for that information in their new decision.
And they'll deliberate based on the information that they've got, the criteria from what was asked.
Correct.
by this
What was
body.
already in the record and the new information from the study.
From the study. Okay? Jim?
As the seconder of this motion, when it was made, this was my understanding of what we were trying to do, that we were not going to try to make them start over, but to just consider the things that were the main points of the appeal. And I think you've covered that very well.
No, I appreciate
So
the direction.
I would move to approve the proposed appeal decision and remand instructions.
As proposed.
As proposed.
All right, I second.
With the amendment
With
as
the
proposed by
amendment.
staff. Just want
Right.
to make sure that was in there.
And I'll second.
Okay. Okay, Jim's got a motion by Catherine, second, to go ahead and approve the proposed appeal decision and remand the instructions back to the Board of Adjustment. Did you get the rest of that, what they said? With the amendment. Okay. Further discussion? Start the roll with John.
I'm not really sure what I'm voting on here.
John, it's amending this appeal to go back to the Board of Adjustment to consider 4 and 7. And it has to do, based on the fact, with whatever the findings from the new parking. Is that correct, Bill? You want to explain that a little deeper, so John?
So this is the order remand and the specific instructions of what the council wishes the board to consider on remand for this application.
Question, Mr. Mayor.
Walter?
The comment by maybe Jim and the clerk were with amendment. What was that?
It's number.
So that was the language we went over. I'm sorry.
The red part of
Already
it.
moved ahead. to
What he
that.
changed
Number
from the packet.
3.
The packet didn't have that in it.
To add the specific
Number 3
references
was
to
different in the
criteria
packet.
number 4 and 7 that was in the motion that the council made.
Okay. I'm good.
So there will be no new testimony, there will be...
No new public hearing, John. They're going to talk about the fact of what they get, what they receive from these instructions, as this council did, and with whatever that public hearing information was before. That's the only thing they're going to listen to. It's not a new public hearing.
Well, that being the case, I guess I'll vote for it.
Okay,
Don't
Catherine?
like to, but
Aye.
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 Okay. So the motion is approved to go back. Bill and you, of course, will be instructing the Board of Adjustment on the matters, and as well as Rod. So thank you. We will move on to item number 8 now, which is Van Pool Van Proposed Award. Jen Piffner will Present.
Yes, hello again. So I provided at the request of Councilmember Steed a few history statistics on the van pool program to date. Do a quick overview of our service. This was a program that was in place starting, we believe, in 2006. The city received a van based on a grant that at that time, I believe it was a 5310 grant. Palouse Clearwater Environmental Institute managed the program for us. They ran the van and provided the operations for the riders. It was a 15-passenger vehicle at that time. In 2010, we received 2 new vans, and the city of Moscow assumed service at that time as well. We began managing the program. So from 2011 forward, we have a few changes in the actual service provided. 2011, we had a bit of a slow start to the regular commuter service for our 2 new vans. So we came up with the conference commuter program. That was for folks going to conferences in the area. They could use the van to carpool and get to where they were going. In 2012, we had all 3 vehicles up and running on daily commuter routes, the 15-passenger and 2 6-passengers. Since that time, I'll talk about ridership numbers here in just a second, but in 2016, we replaced the original 15-passenger vehicle with funds that we had accumulated from fares, and then the 2006 vehicle went to replace a Parks and Recreation vehicle, and our Parks and Rec folks are gone, but I believe that vehicle was a 2000 or better. It was a good replacement swap for us. 2017, we are, as you note tonight, we have an RFP that was recently released to purchase a 2017 vehicle, 15-passenger vehicle, through a grant that we were awarded through the Idaho Transportation Department for FTA 5339 funds. So on the specific vehicles, again, that 2006 15-passenger Chevy was retired to Parks and Rec, came from 5310 funds. Just before our grants manager and I both started here at the city. 2010, we took over, or we got the 6-passenger Toyota and the 6-passenger Dodge. The Toyota is still in service. It actually has 2 riders right now from Lewiston to Moscow, and that was purchased with American Recovery and Reinvestment Act funds. The 2010 6-passenger Dodge, just as of last Friday, actually was pulled out of service as we've had a dip in ridership. But we're looking at a potential new route from Moscow to Lewiston to service Lewis Clark State Community College employees. We have some interest there, so we're trying to switch up our service a bit to make sure that we have some more riders on those vans. 2016, the 15-passenger Chevy came on. There are 12 riders from Lewiston to Moscow, all University of Idaho folks for that one. And that was a fleet purchase, the accumulation from fares, as I noted. And then the 2017 15-passenger, again, those FTA 5339 bus and bus facilities grant award through the Idaho Transportation Department. And we'll be looking at how we can best put that into service should the RFP and contract be awarded this evening. So currently we have 14.4 riders. As I mentioned, we've had a dip in ridership probably since January of this year. 12.4 riders, that's 1 rider that rides Tuesday and Thursday. And then the 2 other riders from Lewiston to Moscow, and those are City of Moscow employees. This is the largest decrease we've seen in ridership since we assumed the program. Interestingly enough, Spokane Valley Transit Van Pool came down and met with us last week. They have they had 87 vans, and they have vehicles that they're pulling out of service and parking right now. And their reason to come down and visit was to say, is there any partnerships we can do with you? Do you have any needs for vans? They're looking for different ways to get their vans up and running as well. So it's not a situation that's unique to Moscow. It's apparently happening throughout.
And I'm sorry, that was who?
Spokane Valley Transit Van Pool, or
Okay.
Spokane Valley Van Pool. Which, though, it was interesting to hear. I think, I know for sure when gas was at $4 a gallon, we didn't have any problem filling seats on the van, but we're in a different climate right now, so. Our average ridership up through the end of 2016 was 22 riders with about 2 open seats that fluctuated. From 2010 to present, we've served 57 individuals, and those are some folks that came for a semester, moved away, moved to Lewiston or Moscow, so it's quite a number of folks that we've served. And then in the future, we've got this 2017 15-passenger vehicle to add to the fleet. We'll do some potential recruitment pending the arrival of the vehicle. And then the 2 6-passenger vehicles are available for potentially a Lewiston to Moscow route, and may need to do some other marketing and recruitment as we look forward. So that would be the overview of the van pool program.
I got a question, yes. Jen. So these vans last between 10 and 12 years?
About our 2006 lasted about
It's
10
old.
years.
Well, we still have it, right? We're still
Yep.
using it, so it's 11
We just
years old.
repurposed it. Our 2006 minivans, or excuse me, 2010 minivans both have about 100,000 miles right now, and that's 6 years in. Of course, they're all highway miles. It's up and down from Lewiston to Moscow, and they've run really well. Our shop does an excellent job of maintaining and keeping those vehicles going. So
There's a point, the reason I asked that question, there's a point about this. I can guarantee you, between now and 10 years from now, commodity prices will fluctuate both up and down. There's no doubt in my mind. Oil's not going to stay cheap forever, so we go through these cycles, and that includes gas. I mean, I'm not very anxious to see $4 a gallon gas, but some days we could very easily see that, so I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Walter. So with the new van, we will have a total of how many vans in service for Van Pool?
we will have 4 vans in service, and even though, for instance, on the 15 passengers, we usually put only 12 passengers on those vehicles. So by the time you get your bags and everything in there, it's just a little bit tight if we try to fill all 15 seats. The minivans with 6 seats are easy to put 6 people in. You could actually fit a 7th on the bench seat in the back, but again, we don't do that just because of personal belongings. So with that, we'll have the 36 seats total. Of course, different amounts of seats can go in different directions. So,
Mr. Mayor, if I may. And what, if somebody wants to ride one of these vans, what's the situation? Is there a buy-in? Is there per day, per month? Who do they pay? Who buys the gas? The city provides the vehicle.
City provides the vehicle. We also have, with our contract for fuel, we have gas cards in the vans. We have drivers that are responsible for fueling and reporting, and they get a discounted monthly membership fee. And so all of our riders pay a monthly membership fare. Shouldn't say fee, it's a fare. We've been able to maintain that at $107 since 2010, also allowing for that accumulation to replace vehicles as needed. You can do a share a seat. Our Tuesday, Thursday rider sometimes has another person who just needs to travel Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So I think 2 times in her 10-year tenure, we've been able to actually split her fare with somebody else. So it's just, you purchase your seat for the month. We do the billing through finance downstairs and do electronic billing, and then they can either do payroll deduction through the University of Idaho, ACH, call in a debit or credit card, and drop off a check, any number of ways.
So the 107 includes the gas?
Includes, yes.
And the city provides a
Yes.
gas card to fill the rig?
Yes.
Okay.
Jim?
Jen, is there any reason why this can't be expanded to between Moscow and Pullman?
We have looked at the Moscow to Pullman route. The most requests we get are from Moscow to Lewiston or Lewiston to Moscow. We've gotten because I started managing it in 2010, I've gotten just a handful of Moscow to Pullman requests. We do have an issue with our insurance company that should we get more interest, we would definitely look into it. We can't end trips across the state line.
That's what I was worried about.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we did have a considerable amount of interest, it would be, I think, well worth our time to go to the insurance company and say, is there something we can work out here, a provision that can be made to accommodate that service? But really, we've just always based it on
the demand
demand.
is not really there to make us look further into.
Not for an 8 to 5, not for a commuter route.
And one last question. So these rigs are part of the City of Lewiston motor pool fleet?
City of Moscow fleet,
City
yes.
of Moscow fleet. And that's why you can, at the end of their use as a van pool rig, they can be used by the city in some other department?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
So this evening, we're asking that you approve our proposal from Chipman and Taylor to purchase a new vehicle, so we can keep the program going and actually expand it a bit. The RFP was for a 2017 15-passenger van pool van, and with acceptance of the RFP, we'll go ahead and process contracts and whatnot as well. And we're bringing this straight to council instead of going to committee with the scheduling for the holidays in the next couple of weeks. We'd be about a month behind schedule in getting this going. So,
Walter?
Mr. Mayor, I would make the motion to accept the proposal from Chipman and Taylor Chevrolet for $31,465.31 to purchase a 2017 15-passenger van pool van and execute a notice of award and vehicle purchase contract as soon as we need to do it.
I would second that motion.
Okay, we got a motion by Walter and a second by Jim to accept the proposal from Chipman and Taylor Chevrolet for $31,465.31 to purchase a 2017 15-passenger van, pool van, and execute a notice of award and vehicle purchase contract. Start with you, John.
Aye.
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 And I.
Okay, thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
We will move on to item number 9, which is well number 6, pump replacement. Bid results and contract award. Les McDonald, hello, Les.
Good evening.
Les will be telling us what's going on with well number 6.
Well, number 6, we are actually in the process of updating and upgrading the operation systems within well number 6. This project is intended to replace the pump and motor system, upgrade some of the controls, and then also add a different control system that helps us deal with improving efficiency and decreasing impacts on the system during startup. So what I mean by that is there's a device here that's included in the alternative bid. We have a base bid here that is the pump and motor system and the controls, and then an alternate bid item that was included in the packet that changes to a what's called a variable frequency drive, a VFD. And that is the type of system we're going to on all of our systems today, all of our boosters and wells today, because it allows us to vary the operation of the pump and motor in such a way that we can operate at the sweet spot, if you will, in the efficiencies based on what the system needs are at that particular point in time. So within this packet, the base bid does the pump and motor system. The add alternate, which we're recommending be included, would substitute a VFD control unit so that we can get the most efficiency out of this and decrease the pressure spikes that you see on startup of large motors upon the system by doing this slow start ramped type system that a VFD allows us to do. Getting into the weeds a little bit, so I didn't want to get too far down that path, but essentially this is a contract that will replace that existing older hardware that is within well number 6 with more current, more up-to-date, more operationally flexible equipment that we can put into service and carry forward from this point. The item before you is the award for low bid to the low bidder of KME Specialties LLC. We had 2 bidders on the project. They were very close in their overall bid prices, within about $2,400 of each other. Both of them were well underneath the engineer's estimate on the project, which we were pleased to see. So the recommendation from staff is to go ahead and award the low bid to KME Specialties, award the contract to KME Specialties for the low bid, along with the authorization for the change orders as per normal. I will also mention, as is the case on the last item, this did not go to committee, as the bid opening was last week after the committee meetings, and with the canceled council meeting on July 3rd, we requested permission to bring it direct to council, which is why it's on the regular agenda item this evening.
I got a question on the VFD thing. Which allows a pump to run at the optimal RPMs at whatever time that is, evening, busy times of the day, middle of the night when it's not busy. So I'm guessing that helps the longevity of these pumps. You address that last?
Yeah, generally speaking, there's always a bit of a trade-off. When the thing about a variable frequency drive is you adjust the essentially the electrical operating point, so the hertz rating within the motor. And if you go too far out, you can cause some detriment to the motor itself. So there's kind of an acceptable range of variability within which you can operate. But in general, the overall life expectancy is at least similar to what a fixed rate would be when it comes to just running it. Where there's an advantage is that, as you said, different times of the day, different times of the year, there's different demands on the system. If you have just a fixed operating point, then that's all you get. And sometimes it's too much, sometimes it's not enough, and you don't have the ability to adjust that operation based on the system. The other really key thing here is there's an item called water hammer. which is a transient flow within a water system. And if you turn on a pump too fast or turn it off too fast or you close a valve too quick, because water's not compressible, it creates a shock wave within the system. When you do that, pressure spike and you can start blowing up things. And so that's where a VFD allows us to start slowly or ramp down slowly so that we avoid those types of impacts on the system.
Okay.
I have a question, but,
Go ahead, John.
well, I was asked the other day, Les, do we really have 10 wells? And I said, yes. I said, I don't know whether they're all being used. How correct was I?
We have drilled 10 wells within our history as a city. Okay? Not all of them were operational.
Okay.
Some of those that were, like well number 1, drilled in 1889, ran for 80 years and then was decommissioned. So currently we have 5 operational wells, which is 2, 3, 6, 8, and 9. And then number 10 is going to be coming online the end of next year. And we also have Cemetery Well, which is currently offline. That's one we didn't drill, and it doesn't have a number. It's just called Cemetery Well.
Okay. I'll pass that on. Thanks.
I had a question on since the engineer's estimate was quite a bit more than the bids, that's kind of the reverse of what we've been seeing on just about every project for the last couple of years.
Nice.
Do you know what the factor was there? What was there some component of that?
I suspect it has as much to do with anything that probably the demand upon the contractors that do this type of work is very different than the demand upon utility, road, concrete contractors that we see. There's so much demand upon those types of trades right now that the bid numbers are way up. This type of work is probably a little more steady in that regard, so we're not seeing quite the escalation.
Okay.
That, Mr. Mayor, I would move to accept the load bid from KME Specialties LLC and award the contract in the amount of $196,580 and authorize staff approval for construction change orders in the amount not to exceed 10% of the contract amount.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion by Jim and a second by John to accept the low bid from KME Specialties LLC, award the contract in the amount of $196,580, and authorize staff approval for construction change orders in an amount not to exceed 10% of the contract bid. I'll start the roll with Walter. Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, there you go. Thank you, Les. We'll riddle them down. Item number 10. Moscow Urban Renewal Agency's EPA Brownfield Cleanup Grant Final Report, Bill Belknap. Bill, you have the floor.
I'd like to read that final report. Thank you very much, Your Honor. In September of 2013, the Moscow Urban Renewal Agency was recipient of an EPA Brownfield Cleanup Grant to assist with environmental remediation of the agency's property that's located at the corner of 6th and Jackson, also addressed as 217-317 West 6th Street within the city of Moscow. The agency had acquired that property in 2010, recognizing that as a critical keystone development site for the future development of Legacy Crossing. And shortly after acquisition of the property, began a couple-year time period of environmental assessments that were completed on the property. The environmental remediation of the site is now complete, and the report this evening is our final project closeout report upon the project and an opportunity for any public comment that may be received. If you look at the downtown area back in the 60s, you certainly can tell, and this is 6th Street here, this is Main, used to be 95 College coming through here, and Jackson. There was a fair amount of heavy industrial activity happening in the south end of Maine, focused on the railroad corridor that came through that portion of the community. Specifically with regard to the agency's property here located at the southwest corner of the 6th and Jackson intersection, there was a company located here, I think it was Pure Grow. You can see the logo here on the corner of the building, and you can kind of see some storage tanks there back in the corner. As you look in the aerial photograph, then in the late 60s and through the 70s, that property, the Ure property is outlined in yellow on the map, was utilized for the storage and distribution of ag chemicals to support agricultural industries within the region. And specifically, what we found was a lot of fertilizers, and those made their way into the soils and into the groundwater underneath the site. As I mentioned, multiple assessments were completed prior to 2013. There was an assessment that was completed, or at least a phase one that was completed when the agency acquired the property in 2010. At that point in time, the city and the agency had received the Brownfield Coalition Assessment Grant, and so that grant was utilized to conduct a couple additional assessments on the property by Tetra Tech and then following up with Terra Graphics. Those early assessments up into about late 2013 primarily focused on pesticides on the property, specifically DDT and Dieldrin that was utilized, and that was what was thought to be the primary element that needed to be remediated upon the property. That was a very different remediation in that is a very shallow soil contaminant that was probably in the top 6 inches of soil on the site that would have to be removed and disposed of at a proper licensed facility. So at the time that the agency made the application for the cleanup grant, that was the scope of work that was identified, was to address Dieldrin and DDT on the property. However, it was shortly after that time that the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality expressed that there was a concern that nutrients had not been adequately addressed or assessed, and that additional assessment work was completed in late 2014 into early 2015. And at that point in time, nutrients became the contaminant of concern on the property, and the pesticides were no longer viewed as being a human health risk. In 2015, then, Terra Graphics completed the final assessment, and the ABCO, as we call it, which is the assessment of brownfield cleanup alternatives, where you take a look at a site, you look at the contaminants that exist on the property, you look at alternatives for remediating and treating it, you look at the human health risk that it presents and the anticipated future use of the property, and you essentially chart the path to remediation of the property. At that point in time, in the August 2015 ABCA, the additional risk modeling was conducted on the pesticides and was determined that that was no longer a human health risk on the site. And as I mentioned, the remediation focused upon nutrients and specifically ammonia and nitrates that were present in the soils and the groundwater at higher concentrations. In addition, if it was just going to be contained on the site, the primary concern was the potential for off-site migration. The nutrients are not specifically a human health risk per se, depending upon how you control the exposure path. And the primary concern was drinking of groundwater that was underneath the site, and this is in the very shallow groundwater. I want to clarify it's between 8 and 15 feet below the ground surface. It's not connected directly to the city's drinking water supply that is, in some instances, several hundred to thousands of feet below several hundred to maybe 1,300 or 1,400 feet below the ground surface. But the primary concern was off-site migration. While the agency could place a covenant on its property to preclude any type of well development or water utilization on its property, it couldn't control it on off-site, and thus we began on the remediation effort on the property. The recommended remediation that was included in the ABCA included a combination of removal of some of the highest concentrations of contaminated soils on the site, and taking those soils and land applying them in agricultural areas, since they are just fertilizers that would be utilized and the plants would uptake the nutrients, and then groundwater treatment and containment with some extraction wells will be placed on the down gradient edge of the agency's property. So this is a map of the site indicating number of borings and monitoring wells. These were 3 extraction wells, 4 injection wells, and the 2 locations in the soil borings that identified higher concentration of nutrients were really kind of the north-central part of the property and some here in the southwest corner of the property. The overall groundwater gradient flows to the northwest on the site, and so the remediation work that was prescribed in the ABCA was removal of these higher concentrations of soils and land applying those on an approved site. The installation of 3 extraction wells on the down gradient side of the property to try to contain any contaminated groundwater on site. That water is collected with small pumps and then discharged to the sanitary sewer system for treatment at the wastewater treatment plant. And then there were 4 injection wells that were installed in order to inject a kind of dilute lactate solution that helps speed up microbial breakdowns of the nutrients below the ground surface. So these are a couple pictures of the excavation depths on the site, and the 2 removal locations went down between 11 and 12 feet in total depth to remove the most impacted soils on the site. So there are those 2 locations. This is the north central location, and then this is the location in the southwest corner of the property. Those were then backfilled with structural fill, compacted to support future development on the site. And then the extraction wells, piping, power system, and discharge systems were installed following the removal of the soil. We broke down the work really in what we called Phase 1 and Phase 2 because there were somewhat different specialties. Phase 1 included the soil removal, and we had about 1,150 cubic yards of soil material that was removed from the site, and the establishment of the sanitary sewer connection for the groundwater treatment system. That was completed by October of 2015. And then in November of 2015, we completed the construction phase of Phase 2, which was the design and installation of the groundwater treatment system, and that was completed, as I mentioned, in November. In January 16, we completed the first of three injection treatment events on the site. And in March 2016, we did our second injection, and then again our final injection in the fall of 16. At the same time, we did some pump upgrades that were requested of the agency by the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality. These are just some nitrate concentrations. So these are two different wells. The orange line is MW3. The yellow line is MW6. And this is the drinking water standard. So you can see that the concentrations were fairly elevated. And then by about February of this year, MW6 was down below the drinking water standard, and MW3 was quickly approaching it. So this was evidence that the treatment and the removal of source and the injections were having the intended effect on the groundwater concentrations. That was good to see. As we reach the closeout of the project, there are really several elements, the first of which was an environmental covenant that's recorded against the property. That covenant prohibits any groundwater extraction upon the agency's property or any future owner. Also documents the engineering control obligation. So those are those three extraction wells until we reach compliance here with MW3 here at the edge of the property. We need to continue to operate those extraction wells to divert that water and to ensure that it does not move off-site. So our environmental covenant places that obligation against the agency until we're relieved. We also have a operations and maintenance plan that goes along with those compliance requirements, and then a financial guarantee and an escrow account that the city is acting as the escrow holder to ensure that there are money set aside for the continued operation of that extraction system. Following the filing of the environmental covenant against the property, then DEQ issued a certificate of completion that documents the completion of the VCP program, the voluntary cleanup program that the agency had entered into with the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality, and then documents the obligations that were referenced in the environmental covenant. And then the final stage was receipt of a covenant not to sue. This is a commitment from the state that will take no legal action against the agency or any future landowner with regard to the environmental contamination that was addressed through this process. And the agency received that document in March of this year. So we are completed through that process. Project costs overall for the remediation. Early on in the process, the EPA had encouraged staff members to attend a brownfield conference for additional training. So I believe Jeff and Elisa attended that event, so there was roughly $3,500 in cost attending that activity. The Phase 1 of the construction work, the soil removal, sanitary sewer connection, was $67,958 for that phase of the project. And Phase 2 for the groundwater treatment design, construction, and injection events, and pump upgrades and other activities, capture modeling, and other things we've done over the course of the groundwater treatment phase has totaled $110,918 so far. So total project cost to date, and these should be finalized. We received our last invoice. We paid that last invoice, and we were done with the project. Totaled $182,346, not including the assessment work that was largely done through the Coalition Brownfield Assessment Grant. I think there was about $110,000 of environmental assessment work that was completed underneath that grant that's not part of the cleanup grant activity that covered the construction. EPA grant reimbursement that we've received, in addition to a pending reimbursement that we expect to see shortly, is $168,646. Underneath the grant obligation, grant contract, the agency, the Moscow Urban Renewal Agency, had a required cash match of $13,700 and in-kind match of $11,005 in total in the project. So the agency is happy to be successfully completed with our remediation effort, and it's been helpful, very helpful to have the assistance of the EPA Brownfield Cleanup Grant, and we look forward to advancing the property to redevelopment with the selected developer of the property being Sangria Downtown LLC. And with that, I would welcome any city council or public comments.
We've came a long ways over the last 50 or 60 years, Bill. I remember as a kid in high school, this is back in the 60s, and I had a friend, his dad had the Shell bulk plant for gas and diesel. And I'd ride with him to go around and pump gas. Shell stations. Well, the biggest concern back then, about half the people in America smoked cigarettes, and the biggest thing we worried about was somebody throwing a live cigarette out anywhere close to one of these bulk plants because of the diesel and gas spill on the dirt. I can remember that just vividly. You know, these huge no smoking signs around that. So we've came a long ways from what it used to be, thank God. So that's a good, excellent report. Questions for Bill?
No, I just have to tell you, when I first got on council, and all the department heads were going through this, you were like, don't ask any questions, I'm just going to go through this whole thing. And you just, because there was so much. So I'm really happy that it's been so long, that it's been so tedious and all the things. So anyway, congratulations.
It's a great process, and we can be proud of it, you know, is how I see it. So, other questions for Bill before we... Well, thank you for the great report, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Well, that was the end of the agenda. We'll go into reports, and I'll start with you, Jim.
Okay, well, Public Works Finance, pretty much everything was on the agenda, and some things that would have been had we not canceled the July 4th meeting, July 3rd meeting, so pretty well covered that. Other meetings that I've been to recently, the Palouse Knowledge Corridor did Be the Entrepreneur Boot Camp recently, and it was well attended and well received, and we're hoping to get some, deliverables on that, on how many of these campers over the last 4 years have actually started a business or decided not to and didn't waste a bunch of money on something that couldn't be successful. We'll consider that a positive outcome as well. They also want to move that back to a June date to get better participation, because they felt there were more people that are able to do it in June than in May. So that's something that will be changed next year. Farmers Market Commission met, and Jen Piffner did a great job of working on the fee structure there, and it's come a long ways to now it's a 3-tiered proposal that is equitable internally, and we'll start working on how it matches up with other farmers markets in the region and where we need to be there, and we'll come up with some sort of a fee increase strategy that doesn't penalize our farmers market people, but also doesn't penalize the taxpayers of Moscow. Mm-hmm. So that's where we're going with that, and it's I think it's given us a structure to work from that's very logical and reasonable and fair to everyone involved. So thank you very much, Jen, for that. The Arts Commission just had Art Walk last Friday, and it was very well attended in spite of the weather. And so thanks to everybody that came to that. It was great. The other Arts Commission thing going on is we're rebidding the public art at the library, including all states bordering Idaho, so we should get a lot more submissions than just the 5 we had before, although some of those may be resubmitted anyway. But there was not one that everybody was like gung-ho about, so decided to expand that and get something that we would be more excited about. And that's all I have.
Okay. Walter, welcome back.
Thank you, sir. Glad I'm here, because if I wasn't, you wouldn't be holding business tonight. On May the 16th, I attended the Regional Public Transit Smart Board meeting. Main part of that discussion was their efforts to find a replacement executive director for Jenny Ford. Subsequently, at the June 13 meeting, we had a new director for 24 hours, Daniel Gray, who was an intern at the city of Moscow in administration. So he was on board. Business was pretty much as usual. They got one particular fairly new bus that's given them a lot of mechanical problems. So there's discussions about warranties and whether or not to try to declare it a lemon and get rid of it or what. So it's offline. They're wrestling with that.
Walter, if you wouldn't mind, if that's okay, is that the bus that had to have all the changes done to it before it could be put in service, the most recent one?
I do not know the answer to that.
Okay.
A good one to ask. It's primarily got to do with airbags in terms of the ride that they're having trouble with. But I don't know the answer.
The newer one that the railings were all in the wrong place and it had to be all redone.
It could very well be. I don't know. I'll find
Air
out.
conditioning was wrong, and there were a variety of problems with the one.
Those aren't the reasons it's offline, but I could certainly ask. The other meeting was the Planning and Zoning Commission on June 14, where they continue to work on updating the comprehensive plan. Went through a couple of items that we had on the agenda tonight, already considered here. So that's what I've got.
Thank you, Walter. Catherine.
I got to attend the Parks and Rec and was introduced to the new Parks and Recreation Supervisor, Kalisa Owens. She came in from Cheney. She was part of youth programs and special events there. It's exciting to meet her, and she was getting used to the pool, and all of the pool stuff was brand new for her, so that was really cool. And then the annual Parks Facilities Tour is June 22nd, Thursday, which I'm bummed I'm going to miss because they go and talk about all the parks and stuff. But we'll be at AIC, which I'm looking forward to. And they continue to talk about the Indian Hills Playground. That was an interesting discussion. We had a special meeting for that one. And then I went to the fire department, and they finally have a date for the 125th celebration. They're going to do it the fair weekend of September 16th, and it's going to be a large open house type of thing at Station 2. So all that's in the making and stuff. So I hope they come and talk to us about that.
Okay, John.
My committees didn't meet,
Okay.
so I really don't have much to add. We did have a meeting with the Choto for affordable housing, and unfortunately, the project that we were working on did fall apart. So we've had to change direction a little bit and try to get something else going so that we can get back in the process of building some affordable housing here in Moscow. And more to come on that.
Okay.
Mayor, question for John. Is that the one over by Police River Drive?
That got so complicated between the Choto for affordable housing, the owner of the project, or the owner of the land, and then two other entities that wanted to be part of, and it just got to the point where it was unmanageable. So that one's gone, and it's not completely buried. It may come back, but right now we got to switch gears, find another project.
Okay. June 7th, I attended Inland Northwest Partners. It had a terrific meeting here at the 1912 building. And of course, Paul Kimmel was the chair of that. And there was people from all over. We had the mayors from Bonner's Ferry was down, folks from Sandpoint, all the way from Grangeville up. Even had a couple of ladies from Dayton, Washington. They talked about parks and some of the things they did. And one of the things they talked about, lo and behold, was they were so proud they were able to finally get a downtown bathroom. So I got kind of tickled by that. And the only problem they really had is they didn't have adequate heating and all the pipes froze this winter. So I kind of felt bad for them. And oh ouch. But anyway, they re-got that fixed or whatever. So they evidently don't have heat in those things in the winter. And this was a winter that would freeze anything in the Northwest. So I felt kind of bad for her, but I wanted to share that with everybody. Excellent. It was a really excellent meeting. I got a chance to meet a lot of people from different areas, very small towns. Even the mayor from Plummer was here. And so it's kind of interesting getting a chance to see people that are in really teeny communities as well. The lady that gave the keynote address was from a place in Oklahoma, and her town had 30 people. And she was actually a city supervisor / manager at a town that had a whopping 1,200 people. But she had some really good presentations, and a lot had to do with what do you do with your downtown with empty buildings. And, of course, we haven't got that issue here, but there are a lot of communities that face that. Smaller areas, like maybe a Bowlville or a Deary, or what do you do? And so it was a very interesting meeting. Anyway, And then June 16th was the fun day. That was the art walk. And, God, I keep thinking of that chalk in front of the chamber. I got pictures of before, in the middle, and after. In fact, I told this guy, we were down there, I said, God, you got to check this out. And that was just absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
but what a great night that was. And I don't know how many people I talked to and how many places I zigzag in and out, but I started at 1 o'clock down there and had lunch with my son at Casa, and then we walked around. Then I took off and came back about 3:30 or 4, and I was there just in and out. It was just a fun day and evening. So, and thank God it looked really threatening I kept looking at my phone. It's supposed to rain from like 10 until 2, and then they changed that from noon until 5, and then they changed that from 4 to 8, and geez, it just sprinkled just a teeny bit. So we got off there. The gods or the art guards are having some fun with us here. But anyway, it turned out very, very nice.
I got watching Kathleen checking everybody on the bike.
Yep,
she was moving around. That was good.
And then, of course, we got this week is AIC. I'll be leaving tomorrow, as well as Catherine and Walter and Gina Terusha. She's down there now because of PEP, as well as her city supervisor, Gary. And there's others. Jen will be down there. So we've got the annual event. That's always a good time because we get a chance to see what other communities are doing and talk as an association with concerns that we have here in our state. So it's kind of a fun thing. So I have an AIC board meeting first thing Wednesday morning, so I'm looking forward to that with some presentations. Jen, do we have anything from the city you want to talk about?
Only update that's been discussed before is the July 3rd council meeting will be canceled, and then so we'll have committee meetings on July 10th, and then the next council meeting will actually be July 17th. So
And before that we had the budget workshop the 10th and perhaps 11th as well.
We do, yes, correct.
With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are done at 8:21, folks. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a nice evening.